Hi, I'm Katie Ziskind. I'm the owner of Wisdom Within Counseling and Coaching, and I specialize in helping distant couples build meaningful relationships and positive emotional bonds and sexual intimacy connections. You can learn more about working with me at wisdomwithinct.com. This is going to be a live recording of my podcast episode, episode number 42 on my podcast, All Things Love and Intimacy. So you're going to see the behind the scenes version of me recording this podcast, and I hope you enjoy. So you'll hear the intro, you'll hear the episode, and this will be a video version of me recording the audio. And you can find the All Things Love and Intimacy podcast on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts for free. Welcome to another episode of the All Things Love and Intimacy podcast. I'm your host, Katie Ziskind. I'm a Gottman Level 2 marriage therapist. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in sex and intimacy with couples who are feeling distant, disconnected, and frustrated. So you can learn more about me at wisdomwithinct.com. This entire podcast is to help you get more in touch with expressing your deeper emotions under anger, figuring out what's going on when there's resentment or avoidance, and building both emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy, which means having a safe place to talk about sex, having a safe place to unfold those deeper emotions and rebuild self-worth after you've been through trauma, and start to really allow your partner in. Intimacy is a fun way of saying, into me you see. So intimacy is into me you see. It means that you're accessible, you're allowing your partner to see the inner child within you, the adult self within you, and you're also able to identify what you're feeling and shift away from those reactive, angry, tense emotions and really get to the center, to the root of what's going on. And when we have a strong emotional intimacy foundation, a strong emotional bond where you feel secure, comforted, safe, and appreciated by your partner, and your partner feels the same way about you, that creates a wonderful foundation for sexual closeness. Fantasies can evolve, sexual urges can be more freely shared, you can talk about what you like and dislike, and there's a beautiful playground that you both create that supports sexual pleasure. So in a long-term relationship, we have an important element of companionship. So that's the friendship element, and that is really essential. We all need to have a best friend in our significant other. You may be really good at parenting. You both may have shared values around finances. You might really like talking about a book you've both read. You might really share values around family. You might be able to laugh together, right? So those are the companionship elements. You both are great at getting a dinner cooked when you've had a long day. Those friendship elements are really important. Those are really key in having a healthy relationship. But a lot of times we actually forget how to be erotic, to be sexual, to allow that sexy self to come out. And so sometimes we get stuck in the companionship mode in a long-term relationship or a long-term marriage. And then couples I work with start to deal with things like sexual avoidance. One partner really wants to have sex. The other partner says, I could never have sex again in my entire life and be fine. And there's this mismatch in desire. So one partner starts feeling rejected and unwanted when they don't get sex, and the other partner starts feeling overwhelmed and pulls away and avoids more because there's so much pressure around sex. There's pressure to perform. There's pressure to obey or get sex off the to-do list. And so it starts to lose this sense of carefreeness. Sex starts to become a reactive subject in many relationships. And it can even come into a power struggle. So one person, maybe your partner really wants to have sex, and then when you're mad, you take it off the table, which is normal if you're not feeling safe. But there's this power play where, you're not going to get it now, even though you want it. And there's this unhealthy dynamic that starts to evolve. So also sometimes when we don't feel safe expressing that sexual side or that erotic side, we feel really lonely in a relationship. We start to feel trapped and confused and helpless, and then we start to have reactive emotions: yelling, blaming, criticism, defensiveness. These not so great parts of both of you, these reactive parts, come out because your core needs aren't being met. So sometimes when we look at rebuilding that sexual side in a relationship, we do need to tend to the emotional garden. So in your relationship, both of you are bringing your own potted plants. One of you is bringing a succulent, the other one's bringing some sunflower seeds, and one of you is bringing some soil, other is bringing compost, and you're literally kneeling down and gardening in the dirt and growing a garden of love, of connection, sensitivity, emotional bonding, understanding each other, becoming very attuned and in sync with each other. And this is something that takes time. And if we don't tend to this garden, just like if we don't water a plant, it's going to dry up and look pretty wilted. So if you don't tend to this garden, if you don't put energy, time, attention, and presence into your long-term relationship, and maybe you're putting presence into your job, or maybe you're working extra hours, or maybe you're just really having fun with your friends and you're not putting time into your romantic relationship, or you're really caught up in parenting a newborn or having a child with special needs, that can take away from this garden of your marriage. And then that garden gets a lot of weeds in it, and that couple bubble gets really weak. And then we see more yelling, blaming, criticism, reactive, tense emotions, unhealthy communication. And now we have to kind of rebuild. We have to plow the garden. We really have to start to get in that garden and start to put in some fertilizer and put in new plants and grow these seeds of love and sexual connection again. So if you were raised in a strict, conservative, religious home growing up, you may have not had any sex-positive education. You may have been told myths, misinformation, negative, fear-based, and shame-based messages around sex, your body, romantic energy, and affection. So sometimes when we grow up in a strict, conservative, religious home, that can play a role in sexual avoidance. So you may have been told that, sex before marriage is wrong, or you may have been told that abstinence is the way to remain pure. And if you're not abstinent, then you're going to be seen in a negative light, and people will look down upon you, or they won't respect you, or you'll go to hell, or there's a lot of fear that's put in there. We also see a lot of obligatory sexual messages. So that's like to-do list oriented sex, where it's, we have to do this in order to have a happy marriage, or we need to do, like a lot of times for females, it's you need to please your husband. You need to put your pleasure and the things that you like sexually to the side and just please, please, please give to your husband. And that takes pleasure out of sexual experiences for a female, often leading to sexual avoidance and a disinterest in sex and low sexual desire. So when there's any sort of like, I have to obey, I have to give, even if female's not interested, not excited, there's not adequate foreplay, there's anxiety, or there's just this physical giving that it can take the spontaneity, the excitement, the joy out of that exchange. So part of what I do with couples is to help work through these reactive emotions. We figure out what's going on beneath, and then we start to reassociate sex, instead of it being associated with fear, shame, guilt, insecurity, and misinformation. We talk about sex in a positive light. We offer sex positive education. And then we also create an association around sex and sexual expression that is positive, that is pleasure oriented. So what does it mean to have pleasure oriented sex? And I'm not just talking about penis and vagina intercourse. When I say sex, I mean everything from making out and French kissing to, if you choose, penis and vagina sex. But everything, oral sex, caressing, foreplay, all the things. So when we look at associating, or maybe for the first time in your life, associating pleasure with sex, it means understanding what you like. So the first step is to know that self-pleasure and masturbation in a moderate amount, a moderation, we're not talking about compulsive masturbation, we're talking about masturbation with the intention of getting to know what you like, getting to know the pressure of touch you like, getting to know the speed of touch you like, getting to know where on the entire landscape of your body you like touch. Understanding what type of movement, what direction of movement you like touch. Do you like fingernails or do you like fingertips? These are all different types of sensations that your body can respond differently to. So when we grow up in a culture that says sex is bad, we often learn that masturbation is taboo and dirty. So a lot of times it's knowing deep down that you deserve pleasure, that it's okay to explore, and we can let go of fear. And from masturbation and self-pleasure, you can better communicate with your partner what you like, what you want them to do, what you would like them to do more of. So knowing yourself is a really important tool in reigniting a sense of connection to your sexual self. And being able to say, hey, I know my sexy side just as well as I know my profession and my job. You know, you can wake up and succeed at your job with your eyes closed, and you can wake up and be a good parent with your eyes closed. But we want that same level of confidence and self-assurance when it comes to knowing your sexual self. And we don't get as much cultural encouragement to explore the sexual self as we do to have a good job and have a beautiful family and have a good home and do all of these other things that are much more culturally supported. So when it comes to knowing yourself, you can communicate with your partner and you can speak up in the moment. A lot of times when we grow up with shame, guilt, insecurity, and fear related to sexuality and sexual development, you may have learned to hold in your voice. So we often hear these themes. Don't speak up, don't rock the boat, don't be too sensitive, don't be too much, don't be too opinionated now, don't be, sit there and look pretty. Especially as a female, we're told, keep your man happy, keep the peace. It's your role to keep a peaceful household. Don't ask for too much. You never want to be a burden. Don't be a burden, right? So these themes are very common for adolescent girls to hear, and they last into adult life. And so these themes and, messages about playing small or not having a voice often come up in sexual experiences. So these narratives can lead to dissatisfying sex, leading to a lack of pleasure. And that creates sexual avoidance. That makes sex not that fun. It makes it less enjoyable. And we have to kind of work through these negative statements we've been told. So it's okay to be opinionated. It's okay to have a voice. It's actually a great thing to have a voice. It's a great thing to be emotionally sensitive. It's a great thing to have needs and wants and your own individualized desires, sexually and emotionally. And so I'm encouraging you right now to communicate those, but in a way that's playful, in a way that's gentle and affirming. When we look at having a voice, we're not having a voice by yelling and screaming or blaming or telling someone it's all their fault. We can have a voice and still take ownership. We can have a voice and share deeper emotions and say, I'm feeling really insecure right now. Something you did made me feel a little bit abandoned and lonely, and I felt a little bit ignored, and that really hit a pain point for me. I'm feeling whatever emotion it is. I'm feeling a little bit insignificant right now. That's you having a voice. Talking about those core emotions in a calm, gentle, and in a way that allows you to take ownership is having a voice. When it comes to sexual experiences, having a voice could look like speaking up when it's uncomfortable. When something that is being done to your body doesn't feel good, like you've listened to yourself, there's this feeling that happens inside your body, you're embodied, and your brain says that doesn't feel good, speak up. Say, hey, I would really like to change positions. Hey, my arm is falling asleep. I really need to shift. Hey, I really need more lube. It's feeling kind of dry. Hey, I really want to try the sex toy. Hey, I really need more foreplay. I need 30 more minutes of foreplay before we even consider penetrative sex. Hey, I really need some water. Hey, I really need to go to the bathroom. Hey, I'm about to fart, right? Speaking up is really important, and something that many women are actually told to do the opposite. Is just stay quiet, grin and bear it. If it's painful, sacrifice your own pleasure so that your partner can be happy. So I'm here to tell you that mutual pleasure is important. And when we look at shifting away from a sexually avoidant cycle, and if you're a person that says, yeah, I could give or take sex, there may be an association of pain or it being uncomfortable or even sexual trauma or unwanted touch in your past that has created a negative association with sex. So sometimes we have a very fear-based and shame-based, guilt-ridden relationship with our own sexualities, our own bodies, from religion, culture, a conservative upbringing, these themes of being told to just, bite your tongue and keep the peace and don't speak up. And all of that plays into sex being this thing that's like emotionally charged and unpleasant. So by communicating with your partner, you can say, hey, I really like this. I really need more of this. You can have more pleasure-oriented sexual activities and experiences. And when we talk about pleasure-oriented sex, we're not talking about the pressure to perform. We are not talking about faking an orgasm so that your partner can think they're doing a good job. We are not talking about having massive multiple orgasms. We're just letting that happen if that happens, but that happens through the journey and the roadmap of pleasure. So we're also not talking about having to have a hard, erect penis and perform. We're taking the obligation off of having to orgasm. We're taking the pressure off of having to have penetrative sex. We're taking all future outcomes off. We're just in the moment. We're in the here and now. We're experiencing pleasure, whether that's just making out and kissing. That can be an incredibly pleasurable experience, and it doesn't have to lead to anything in the future. And so often we go into sexual activities feeling like we have to give, or we have to have it end a certain way, or we have to have it be orgasm oriented, or we have to have a hard penis and have it end in penis and vagina sex. And these cultural expectations about sex take the joy and pleasure out. So when we look at creating long-lasting, loving, meaningful sexual experiences together in a marriage or a long-term relationship, we need to take any expectation away, because expectations are often unrealistic. Yes, it may be realistic. People can orgasm. Yes, it may be realistic to have penetrative sex, but going into an experience with expectations for yourself and for your partner, and generally what we think it should be, take all joy and all pleasure out. So if we go, let's take it off sex for a minute. If we go into marriage and we think that marriage is supposed to be exactly what we see in a Hollywood movie, we're gonna be pretty disappointed. Marriage is not just what you see in a Hollywood movie. Marriage is an exchange of emotional experiences. Sometimes in a marriage, you have unexpected loss. You're grieving the loss of a loved one. You're struggling with a mental health condition. You are dealing with a massive surgery you never thought you would have. You are dealing with a parent who is sick and struggling. You're dealing with a full range of human emotions. And Hollywood movies only show the absolute best times. They show a happy ending. They show excitement. They show, great sex. Hollywood movies set the expectation that marriage is pudding and jello. Just the sweet times. Just the best times. And marriage is not always sugar. And when we go into it thinking that marriage is a Disneyland experience, we're disappointed. And so the same thing is true with sex. Oftentimes pornography can be sexually arousing, but pornography is not a form of proper sexual education. So pornography is a form of erotic material, meaning when you watch people being turned on or you watch your fantasies, you can find yourself aroused. However, those fantasies may not be something your partner is comfortable with doing in real life. And pornography can create unrealistic expectations around sex. So if you're a man, you might look at pornography and think that you have to stay hard for 20 minutes because the porn star in that video is maintaining a hard erection at full peak for 20 minutes, when they may have taken a variety of medications and have conditioned their body to do that, and there were a lot of cut scenes, and maybe that 20-minute video that you see online was filmed over 3 hours. We don't know. So unrealistic expectations are very common from watching pornography. Another piece is that pornography can condition you, if you're watching it, to only become sexually aroused from watching porn. So you essentially train yourself and condition yourself to be less aroused by your real life partner. And this creates a cycle of sexual avoidance. So let's say you're a man, you have found yourself watching pornography more and more and more. Maybe it was 10 minutes one day a week. And then a couple weeks out of the month, you're like, no, I'm not going to watch it. And then maybe once a month you're watching it. And then now you're watching pornography for maybe hours every day. So you're conditioning your sexual arousal mechanism to be solely aroused and only aroused by pornography, by these extreme fantasies that you see. And when your partner comes on to you and kisses you, your body won't respond sexually because you've essentially conditioned yourself and paired your brain to only become excited from pornography. So we can often see a man develop an avoidance of sex with a real life partner. Their real life partner starts to feel confused and ignored sexually because pornography doesn't involve human emotion. So when you condition yourself to only be aroused from pornography, you also inadvertently train yourself to become aroused and not have to deal with a human's emotion. So when you are having real life partner sexual activities, you might have to, smell some bad breath if they didn't have a breath mint. You might have to figure out the energy of making out with someone. You might have to, your partner might say, oh man, I'm having a stomach ache, I'm having some anxiety, and you might need to reassure them and physically and verbally offer them reassurance and say, hey babe, no worries. I think you're so beautiful. I don't care that your stomach's making some gargling noise. Like, that's beautiful. That's hot. Like, I'm just so into you. And when you watch pornography, you stop knowing how to do that. You essentially train yourself to not have to respond emotionally to a real life human. So when you're in a real life partner experience, you may want to take a pause and talk about your feelings. Your partner may have an anxiety that they're going to come to you and, I'm anxious, blah, blah, blah. And then you have an opportunity to say, you're the hottest person in the entire world and I am so into you, and give them a little pep talk from a very genuine place and compliment them and reaffirm that bond that you both have. And that is not shown in pornography. So pornography creates unrealistic expectations that people bring into real life partner sexual activities, that we're never going to talk about emotions, that it's just going to be 100% great all the time. Pornography makes people think that sex is going to be easy, and if it's not easy, then we shouldn't even be having it, right? That myth is very problematic for long-term couples, because just like you take time to cook a delicious meal and you've prepared a nice dinner, the same thing has to happen for beautiful sexual experiences. And we can't look at porn and compare ourselves to what we see in porn. We can't look at porn and say, well, if that porn star can do that so easily, then so should I. That is unrealistic, and we need to be able to separate what we see in porn as a Hollywood movie, as a fantasy, as those are actors and actresses who are being paid to put on a performance, right? If you went to a theater production, you would never go home and say, I have to sing just as good as those people that have practiced and practiced on stage for months and weeks. And so we can't compare ourselves to what we see. You can use porn as a form of erotic stimulus, but if you notice yourself turning towards it more than you turn towards your real life partner, then you are probably using pornography to self-isolate, withdraw, and almost as a little bit of an addiction. And that's going to 100% absolutely take away your ability to be sexually accessible to your partner, and it's going to strain your marriage and your relationship. And so we talk about porn in an open, honest way. Porn is not good or bad, but we do have to know what porn is, what it can do, what it can cause. So if you're interested in learning more about what can cause sexual avoidance, how to work through those deeper core emotions and build healthy communication skills, how to improve your sexual connection and emotional presence, because those two are connected, I would love to talk with you. We talk about everything from growing up in a strict conservative religious home and how that influences you. And we also talk about how to verbalize and express emotions underneath anger, tension, conflict, and resentment to better feel a sense of security in your partnership. We also talk about how to shift out of your career and professional self, how to shift out of your parenting self, how to shift out of this everyday self that you're very good at being in, into your sexual, erotic, sensual, romantic self, the pleasure self. We talk about how to create more pleasure-oriented sexual activities and sexual experiences that do not have to inherently lead to penetrative sex, that don't have to lead to orgasm, that don't have to be a certain way, that don't have to be right or wrong. We talk about creating pleasure in the way that it's emotionally connecting and physically connecting. And the more you can experience pleasure with your long-term partner or spouse, the more joy and meaningful connection you will get out of your relationship together. So we can start to really unpack some of those difficult experiences and have uncomfortable conversations and help you get comfortable talking about sex in a positive way and really have a voice. So if you're struggling, if you and your partner are feeling sexually frustrated, you're feeling ignored or lonely, there's a cycle of sexual avoidance where one of you wants to have sex and the other one does not want to have sex, and there's this standoff, this frustrating standoff. I help you work through the multidimensional and complex facets and aspects that need to be tended to so you can have a beautiful flowering garden, so that the soil can be enriched, the sunlight can be the perfect amount, you have the right amount of water, and you have these plants in your garden of both emotional and sexual intimacy that are growing, right? And you're maintaining the garden as well. You're not only creating it, but you're maintaining emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy. And so I hope you really understand yourself and your own sexuality from a place of confidence, and also understand your partner, because so often we don't have a safe place to learn about emotional expression, foster emotional sensitivity, and talk about sex. So if you're interested in working with me, I love helping distant couples who want to rebuild meaningful connection on a physical level, sexual level, and emotional level. And this can be a wonderful thing too to change generational patterns. So if you saw your parents very disconnected or in conflict, by learning how to build emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy from working with me, you can actually then teach your children how to have a more emotionally connected and safe and secure relationship by expressing your feelings in that way. So it's really beautiful when you learn how to cope with anger, when you learn how to figure out what's underneath anger, and verbalize fears, verbalize insecurities, be vulnerable. Those skills are amazing to teach your children as well, because you teach your children how to verbalize their emotions and how to step away from reacting out of anger and aggression into really being seen and heard on a sensitive level. So I love helping couples. If you're looking to get started, you can book your phone consultation to work with me at wisdomwithinct.com. That's wisdomwithinct.com. I'm Katie Ziskind. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in multiple states. I'm a Gottman Level 2 therapist. I am a certified sex therapy informed professional, which means that I specialize in sex and intimacy with couples. And I would love to help you build emotional connection as well as sexual passion in your relationship.